Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. On today's show, we're going to dive into the Thunder making their first trade of the week, trading for Okpala from the Miami Heat. The NBA trade deadline is heating up. What do these rumors mean for the Thunder? Mamadi Diake is waived, and will Kendrick Williams be moved on Thursday? All of this and more on the first edition of Locked On Thunder of the day. Coming up on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day.
You are Locked On Thunder, your daily Oklahoma City Thunder podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's get it going on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. I'm your host, Rylan Stiles. You can follow me on Twitter at Rylan_Stiles. Follow the show on Twitter at LOThunderPod. Email the show, LOThunderPod@gmail.com. On today's show, brought to you by PrizePicks, we're going to dive into the Oklahoma City Thunder trading for Okpala from the Miami Heat, to the NBA trade deadline rumors, and roster moves for the Thunder ahead, including will Kendrick Williams be on the move on Thursday. But PrizePicks is bringing you today's episode. Check out PrizePicks.com and use the code NBA, or go to your app store and download the app today. PrizePicks is a daily fantasy prop operator made easy. Well, this is the first of many podcasts today. You're going to get this podcast today. You're going to get a recap of the Toronto Raptors game today and a recap of the trade deadline. So a lot of podcasts to be had in today's lifespan, but let's start first with the move that is official. Okpala traded to the Oklahoma City Thunder from Miami Heat. The Thunder received Okpala. The Heat received the least favorable 2026 second-round pick swap, and these two teams amend a previous pick protection. The Thunder and Heat will amend the 2023 first-round pick the Heat had previously owed OKC, whereas 2 years of protections will be eliminated from this deal. The pick will now be owed to the Thunder starting in 2025, lottery protected. If it does not convey in the 2025 lottery protected draft pick, then it will convey to an unprotected pick in the first round of the 2026 NBA draft. So the Thunder let Miami free up a pick to trade in this deal because of the step-in rule, and in the return process, this pick gets kicked down the line to where now this pick from Miami will be made either in 2025 if this Miami pick falls out of the lottery in 2025, or an unprotected 2026 pick, which is going to be the Thunder's no matter where it lands if it does not convey in 2025. As well as with this deal, the Thunder have waived Mamadi Diake from a 10-day deal. It expires a day early, set to expire today and Thursday, but they released him on Wednesday to make this deal official. So a lot of ways to go with this trade, but let's start with Okpala. He's on an expiring deal worth $1.7 million, which is a big deal as we continue on Thursday afternoon. He's a restricted free agent after this year. He's 22 years old. He's a 6'8" power forward, and he provides really good defense. He shoots over 40% from the corner three. Stanford University has a wrist injury right now. With his wrist injury, he has not played since December 28th. 3 points, 2 dunks, and assists per game in 21 games this year. And to put it into perspective, Okpala has been in the league for 3 years. Tre Mann's been in the league for half a year, and their minutes are very comparable. I think that Okpala has like 20 more minutes or something crazy like that than Tre Mann, but that's it. And Tre Mann's not even the rookie who gets a ton of play. Like, obviously, Josh Giddey has been starting from day one on this roster. So imagine comparing those two stats in terms of minute loads for their roster. So Okpala, while being 22 years old, is also very young in experience time in the NBA. So that's a big deal as well for the Thunder. I mean, if the Thunder do want to keep a 6'8" power forward who can play really good defense, especially as Jeremiah Robinson-Earl is out for 6 weeks, it would make some sense. And the Thunder were able to acquire him for just a draft pick by waiving Mamadi Diake, who played very well in training camp and in the preseason, and over the course of his 3 10-day deals, 1 hardship and then 2 regular. And the organization made no bones about how much that they really like Mamadi Diake. And I mean really, really like him. The organization at every stage has had high praise for him. And so I wonder what happens if he doesn't get hurt with that hip fracture in the offseason, in the preseason, I should say. In the preseason, if Diake's healthy, does he take Gabriel Deck's spot at that point in the year? And he played very well in the 10-day deal, especially recently as he had to start due to the injuries to the Thunder. And hopefully he can hook back on with the Oklahoma City Blue and stay within the organization. But we'll see if another team wants to take a shot at him on a 10-day deal or beyond. But it does come at a cost to acquire KZ Okpala. Now, the burning question becomes, what's next? What does this trade mean? And even pregame, whenever asked when is KZ Okpala going to report, Mark Dagnall said that the situation is fluid and that they'll know more when the dust settles on Friday. So by no means should you rush out and buy a KZ Okpala jersey or even pencil him into any sort of minute load or even stencil him in, if you're an artist out there on Twitter, stencil him into a Thunder jersey. This is not a done deal. Remember, I have sources saying that the Thunder are looking to do 2-for-1 deals that take on huge salaries, and in return, because of that huge salary dump that they're going to take on, get better assets. And that's not off the table, even though now you're down your open roster spot, because the situation is fluid, and it's very easy to either release or flip KZ Okpala. He's only owed $1.7 million. The Thunder are at least $23 million under the salary cap floor. So the Thunder can easily get off of KZ Okpala in this deal and in this release, so to say, and still have an open roster spot to take on a 2-for-1 trade. Now, how many salary dumps are there out there? How many trades are there still available for the Thunder as the deadline nears in a couple of hours? Who knows? But I would not rule out a 2-for-1 deal just yet, and I would not automatically assume that the Thunder will utilize KZ Okpala in any meaningful way and will even have him on the roster. So, to me, this is a nothing move to help the Heat grant a first-round pick access earlier in their trade endeavors. And for the Thunder, if nothing else comes up and nothing else is available, they get a nice project wing for the rest of the season. And if something does come up available, it will not hinder them in any way to move on from KZ Okpala. But the Jerry injury makes it very interesting on what to do with him long-term and how to handle him in the future. And we'll see where he lands from here on out. But this deadline has been getting off to a fast and furious start. We still have the James Harden saga weighing over everybody's head. I don't know who to believe in this James Harden situation. You've got Philly reporters, Brooklyn reporters, Woj saying, no, Harden will not be dealt. And then Brian Windhorst is just setting fire to everything, saying he absolutely wants out and he will be dealt. And then today, Windhorst in the early hours of the deadline day tweets out that Harden wants out, wants to request a trade, but is scared of the backlash from requesting a trade. Well, you just put it out in the public. You pretty much just requested a trade, did you not? Like, are you serious with this? And so that James Harden domino, the possible James Harden for Ben Simmons swap, does tie back into the Thunder. Could they help the Sixers apply pressure to Brooklyn, or could they help the Sixers acquire James Harden today on deadline day with Tobias Harris? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Kendrick Williams, and we're going to talk about how the rest of the deadline has impacted the Thunder, all coming up on today's Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. But first, I want to tell you right now, what are your friends over at PrizePicks? Folks, PrizePicks is incredible. You pick 2 to 5 players and an over-under on their projected numbers, and you can win up to 10 times on any entry. It's just you versus the projected numbers. Entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It's that easy. PrizePicks is safe and offers fast withdrawals. Use the award-winning app both on the App Store and Google Play Store. PrizePicks has a variety of options. PrizePicks even offers any prop you can think of, from points scored to rebounds and even steals. PrizePicks allows mixed sport entries, so you can take the over on Joey Burrow yards in the Super Bowl and the under on Taylor Mouth on points for the Thunder game. PrizePicks does not just offer NBA, they offer college basketball, college football, NFL, MLB, soccer, MMA, and more. For a limited time only, PrizePicks has an exclusive no-brainer of an offer for all of our users. Our users get $50 for free if a player in your first PrizePick entry scores a single point. But you must use our code NBA. That's right. This is an exclusive offer available for Locked On fans. Sign up today and use the code NBA for $50 for free if an NBA player that you pick first scores a single point. How awesome is that from PrizePicks? Check out their award-winning app or prizepicks.com. We are back on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. It is, folks, it's deadline day. It's deadline day. It is NBA trade deadline day. Thank you for making Locked On Thunder your first listen every single morning, every single day. We're here for you. The NBA trade deadline is today, February 10th at 3 p.m. Eastern. And the Locked On NBA podcast will cover it live from 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. Join Kim Becker, John Corrales, and Locked On fantasy basketball host Josh Lloyd to get analysis of every blockbuster move. Subscribe to the Locked On NBA YouTube page and turn your notifications on so you know when they go live. Locked On NBA, again, Locked On NBA YouTube channel. Go check them out, subscribe, and be ready because they're going to go live at 1 p.m. Central to 3 p.m. Central. I'll be in the chat telling you my reactions to trade and also what I'm hearing about the Thunder. I'll be in the chat. They'll have me on if the Thunder do anything special. We're going to have John Corrales, Kim Becker, and Josh Lloyd there, along with our local experts. If anybody does anything wacky, we're going to be there covering it all. So make sure you're there or be square at our NBA trade deadline show. Cannot wait for that to kick off. Cannot wait to see what unfolds today at the NBA trade deadline. So we're all squared away on that front. Let's get back to the NBA trades as they impact the Oklahoma City Thunder. And yes, folks, yes, it is a pleasure to come to you from deadline day here in Oklahoma City because so many things are happening. And the latest and greatest rumor is about the Tobias Harris contract. Here's the deal. Sources have confirmed many reports that are out there that the Thunder and 76ers have engaged on Tobias Harris's contract. Here's what it looks like. Tobias Harris is owed $35.9 million this year, $37.6 million next year, and $39.2 million the following year. He's an unrestricted free agent in 2024. You have to remember, though, SGA's extension kicks in next year. And the Thunder, as of now, do not project to have a ton of cap room or be a salary cap team, according to the friend of the podcast and our good friend Keith Smith, who works at Spotrac, does a ton of great work regarding the salary cap. Also, keep in mind, Derek favors his player option for $10.8 million, which I have a hard time believing he turned down. So all of that impacts the cap, bringing in, of course, 3 more rookie contracts at least in the upcoming draft with 3 first-round picks and any other moves in the offseason. So you have to remember how much the Tobias Harris deal will impact things, as well as remember that you don't typically see the Thunder buy out a ton of contracts. They did buy out Kemba Walker's contract. So unless Tobias Harris would be willing to make a ton of concessions and just give away money and do basically what Blake Griffin did last year, give away money to get out of Oklahoma City, they're not going to buy him out, especially not with 3 years left. And so that's why it hits the ear funny whenever you hear Tobias Harris and salary dump in the same sentence. While it's not one of the worst contracts ever because he's at least a productive player on the floor in some capacity, not as productive as his contract should suggest, but he's at least playable. There's a lot of bad deals that just aren't playable, right? It's still a very bad contract. It's one of the worst in the league in the sense of the number, and especially if you move him to a rebuilding team. It really messes with the Thunder cap space if they take on Tobias Harris. What it does for the Sixers, of course, sheds that money and also applies pressure on Brooklyn in the James Harden sweepstakes, the James Harden trade, because now that opens the door more so for a sign and trade in the offseason if that's where James Harden wants to go. So a lot at stake here. And it's to the point where Sam Presti might be able to pinch a lot of assets out of Daryl Morey. The problem is with this, and why I wonder if a deal will actually happen involving Tobias Harris with the Thunder, is if we can all agree that given these negative circumstances around Tobias Harris and his contract, and how desperate the Sixers are to get off of it, and how much it doesn't not make sense for the Thunder to take on Tobias Harris in this form of the rebuild. As much as all those things are true, when you factor in that they're going to trade or at least attempt to trade for James Harden, which takes Ben Simmons off the board, not that the Thunder would want Ben Simmons, but he's one of their better assets. Likely takes Tyrese Maxey off the board because you either don't want to trade him at all or you're going to have to trade him for James Harden if you're going to trade him at all. Takes Tyrese Maxey off the board. Seth Curry is a nice piece, I think, for Brooklyn, but not for the Thunder, so he's another asset off the board. And any first-round picks, how many can you get for just taking on the Tobias Harris deal? That would be of so much value, you'd be willing to take on that contract and risk the future penalties for it. To where it just does not make sense logically unless the 76ers are willing to just overpay extremely. And at that point, why would they if they can figure out a way to get James Harden anyway? Like, obviously, if you can somehow trade for Tobias Harris and Tyrese Maxey, that'd be one thing. But would Daryl Morey, who wants to win every single trade, just like Danny Ainge did, would he want to give up a ton of assets just to move off of Tobias Harris's contract? I don't think he'd be willing to pay the piper for what it would take. I don't. Now, the sides are talking, and as I've reported, the Thunder are open to taking on a salary dump, for sure. Open to it. But this is quite the salary dump. This is quite the dump. And I would imagine that in some way Derek Favors gets involved in this if they did it. I have not had that any source at all. Just kind of spinning my own wheels here. But all in all, if I had to bet right now, if I had to bet money, I'd say it likely doesn't happen. But it is something that the Thunder haven't engaged the Sixers with, and the Sixers engaged the Thunder with, and vice versa. Right? They've talked about it. And personally, if I was Sam Presti, this is a move I'd stay away from. But I'm not Sam Presti. And Sam Presti, as you all know, is smarter than I am when it comes to how to run a basketball team. But I just personally do not see this move working out if the Thunder made it. But of course, we're going to be here recapping it all, no matter what the Thunder do on Thursday. However, to power through this day, to power through deadline day when you're scrolling through Twitter and TweetDeck at the same time, folks, I'm not kidding you, folks. I've got Twitter on my phone, and I'm so insane. I'm such a crazy person. I've got TweetDeck on my laptop, both of them at all times on deadline day. And to power me through this and to keep me alert and awake and waiting for the next wave of trades to go down, to do all of that, I'm using Built Bar. Built Bar is fantastic. This time of year, I'm sure many of you have given up on your New Year's resolutions. I have before as well, but not this year. This year, I am sticking to my resolutions because Built Bar makes it so easy to make the right choice. Built Bar is 130 calories, 6 grams of sugar, I should say 4 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. It's better than a candy bar with 100% chocolate on the outside of every single bar. They have great flavors like mint brownie, coconut almond, and very, very much more, including limited time only flavors. And the new flavor of the month called white chocolate cookies and cream, which cookies and cream was my very favorite to begin with. Now you add white chocolate cookies and cream. I'm all in. I am all in. Sign me up. Those all sound delicious, and new flavors are coming out each and every day. So make sure you check out Built.com. Use the code LOCK15, 15% off of your next order. Built.com, promo code LOCK15, 15% off of your next order. Folks, it's a protein bar, but it tastes like a candy bar. It does not have that waxy, chalky, disgusting taste to it like most protein bars do. This one's different, though. This one has all the good stuff you want. It tastes fantastic, and you're going to want to check it out at Built.com. Promo code LOCK15, 15% off of your next order. Built.com, promo code LOCK15, 15% off of your next order. We are back. on the Locked On Thunder podcast, on the Locked On Podcast Network, your teams every day. Folks, one more reminder. It is deadline day today, February the 10th, 3 p.m. Eastern to 4 p.m. Eastern. Let's do it. In fact, the show runs longer than that. The show runs from 1 p.m. to 3 p.m., but the deadline happens at 3 p.m. Eastern. So make sure you're in there talking all about it with our good friend John Corrales and our good friend Josh Lloyd and our good friend Kim Becker. They got you covered. At the deadline show, I'll be in the chat talking away, and I'll hop on the show if anything goes down regarding the Oklahoma City Thunder. So make sure you're there as well. Follow me on Twitter as well for all the live updates at Rylan_Styles, at RYLAN_STILES. Now, let's talk about the deadline before we wrap up pod number 1 of 3 today on the Locked On Thunder podcast. The big question for the Thunder, besides Tobias Harris, is will Kendrick Williams be dealt? Will Kendrick Williams be traded? Was Wednesday against the Raptors Kendrick Williams' last game as a member of the Thunder? Well, honestly, it sounds boring, but I don't know. And the reason why is that I think this deal, if it gets done, will happen at the buzzer, will happen at the wire. And I think that this move will not be a party move for the other team, so they're going to wait it out as long as they can. If I had to bet right now, I'd say that Kenny Hustle is here at 4 p.m. Central Time. But it's a scenario. It's the rare scenario where you can't carve out a take, right? Tobias Harris. If they did the Tobias Harris move, the take is, I don't like this. I do not like this at all. But Kendrick Williams, if they keep him, you can absolutely 100% positively defend the move with all you have. If they keep him. If they trade him, it's the same thing. It's completely understandable, completely explainable, and it's a move you can get behind in either direction. And that is the hardest to make as a GM. That's the hardest to make in life. Whenever you have two decisions, a fork in the road, where either one seems very, very appealing. How do you know which one's the most appealing? I think if a Kenny Hustle trade gets done, it will not happen before 2 p.m. I think that it's going to go down to the wire. We will see when the dust settles. Now, check back on the Locked On Thunder podcast. Every podcast is free. It's all available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, any other podcatcher, and YouTube. So subscribe for free across all platforms. Be ready for our next podcast, recapping the Raptors game, and then the following podcast, recapping the deadline. It's all here for you. Locked On Thunder podcast on the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your teams every single day. Until the next podcast, be good. Be good to one another.